Music and Booze with Mo is produced and distributed by EatsDrinksTV, a service of the Center for Culinary Culture, home of the Cocktail Collection, and First Reel Entertainment, and is available wherever fine podcasts can be heard. The Center for Culinary Culture, telling the story of food and drink, one taste at a time. Welcome to Music and Booze with Mo. I'm Mo Herms, and I've worked in the music industry most of my life, so have met some pretty amazing musicians over the years. I also love a good cocktail, and I've encountered some really interesting bartenders as well. It seems that there's a lot of crossover, so when I can, I like to talk to musicians and bartenders about music and booze. Join us at the bar, won't you? Music and Booze with Mo is brought to you by The Mermaid, a cozy neighborhood bar with an aquatic flair in the Little Tokyo area of downtown LA. Open 7 days a week, featuring tropical cocktails and snacks, The Mermaid also has a daily happy hour from 5 to 8 p.m. Follow The Mermaid on Instagram at The Mermaid LA to hear about upcoming events and check them out at themermaidla.com. Head to 428 East 2nd Street, Los Angeles, for a drink.
But I've been called by a higher lonesome than low as low can be. You can write it on my tombstone, outlaw life looks pretty wholesome when you pay the price in foolishness it takes to get you free. Higher lonesome, kill the bitter parts of me.
Today I get to talk to Hannah Withers, who along with her husband Ben Gitchell are the caretakers of Maxine's Tap Room, which is a very old, very historical, very special spot in Fayetteville, Arkansas. Maxine's has been around since 1950, and it was opened by Maxine Miller, who, as a single woman, borrowed money from her parents to open the bar. This was not something you could do pretty much anywhere in the country, and she did it, and she ran that bar until she passed away. The family still owns it, and Hannah, who we'll get to talk to, and Ben took over as caretakers, as they prefer to be called, and have kept it very much a community spot while also bringing it into the modern cocktail era, introducing craft cocktails and bringing folks around. Maxine's is also really dedicated to their community, establishing a legacy fund in 2022 under Maxine's name with the University of Arkansas. You can read more about that on the Maxine's Tap Room website. But I'm going to get started talking with Hannah, who herself comes from a long background of being involved in community and local business, and especially a big musical family. She was the only one that didn't try to pursue it professionally. So we get the music and the booze right here with Hannah Withers of Maxine's Tap Room.
My name is Hannah Withers, and my husband, Ben Gitchell, and I are the co-caretakers of Maxine's Tap Room in Fayetteville, Arkansas. We opened our first place together 25 years ago. It was an artisan bakery, and we have since then opened a second location and sold it to our staff. We've opened a small plates restaurant. We've managed some outdoor street festivals that are in our downtown neighborhoods, and created a pop-up bar that was a 40-day long Christmas pop-up bar, and have sort of done a lot of different hospitality projects in Northwest Arkansas, kind of all over the area in our 25 years of being married together. And Maxine's is the only one that we currently are working in. And it's the one that we didn't create from scratch, and maybe the one that we love the most too, and it's going to be the hardest one to move on from.
Oh, I'm sure. I mean, it's a very unique space. So just tell me a little about Maxine's, because I've read about it, but being there, I know is a totally different thing.
We had our second location of Little Bread Company is on Block Avenue in downtown Fayetteville, and we became friends with Andrea Foreign, who's the great niece of Maxine Miller, and Andrea had just inherited her great aunt's bar, which opened originally in 1950. And when we moved here in 2007, she had just inherited the place. Maxine had just passed away, and it was we are in a college town, less than a mile from campus, sort of a little bit off the beaten path of our entertainment district. So we're not on the main drag of the bars that are right next to the University of Arkansas, but we're right around the corner. And it has gone through many lifetimes and many evolutions, being a place and being a bar in a college town. I mean, we have people that on alumni weekends and parent weekends that come in now with three generations of University of Arkansas alum, or maybe a current student, and her parents and grandparents will come in, and they were all drinkers at Maxine's. They all have stories about that bar. A lot of them worked at that bar. Uh, it is a place that has been there for a really long time. It's turning 75 this March, and we have been there for 12 years. So we sort of helped Andrea reimagine this place in 2013. We still had the bakery across the street open, and we just knew that when Maxine passed away, that it was just one of those sort of legendary divey smoky beer bars, a lot of pitchers. She had a bowling machine. She had several jukeboxes that people mention when over the years when they come in, and we knew that it was kind of going the way of the dinosaur. I mean, I think Maxine was a really big personality and a really big presence, and she was in that bar and sat on her stool with her name engraved on the stool almost every day. And we knew that when she was gone, that it was probably not going to last much longer the way that it was. So we sort of did a throwback to the year that she opened in 1950, and we did some sort of uh, a small classic cocktail menu, maybe 8 drinks. We were the first ones in Fayetteville to have a Moscow Mule in a copper mug. In our
Wow.
things tend to get a little bit well, I'm sorry, we were the first ones, at least in this sort of generation of craft and classic cocktails. Probably originally there were plenty of them serving them, but for this sort of revolution of craft and classic cocktails, we were the first ones to sort of bring that back, and we weren't doing, the apple martinis and the things of the 90s that happened. And so uh, we started there with 8 classic cocktails, and it's kind of snowballed into its own thing. And it is this beautiful place that has a ton of stories that came with it, a ton of pictures. Everything is very well archived. The family saved everything that was ever in the bar. I think Maxine saved everything that was ever in the bar. And it's the kind of place that you can't buy and you can't build unless it's been there for 75 years, you know?
Absolutely. Well, what's your background? I mean, obviously you said you've owned a lot of businesses and some are bakeries, some are this, but you got into this bartending gig, but so this couldn't have been your first time bartending.
I did a little bit of bartending at the Mercury Cafe in Denver, which is where I grew up in my 20s. I've worked in restaurants since I was about 14, I think. I wanted to buy my first car, and I was in our neighborhood restaurant. And my husband and I have both been in restaurants since we were 14. So I have crossed over in the bar world, but this was our first. And we knew from how often we traveled and the places that we visited that we really wanted to see this place as an adult bar. It wasn't a restaurant that had a good bar at the front or a hotel lobby where you could get a good martini, but we wanted a place that wasn't just for college kids. And we my cousin, Matt Johnson, owned a bar called Secret Society in Portland, Oregon, at the time. And we had been out to visit him a couple times, and he flew out and walked us through sort of the very basics. And I feel lucky that we had, already some background in cash flow and how to pay taxes. And, we weren't starting everything from scratch. And I think that both of us have enough of a culinary background and a palate to sort of understand how those few classic drinks were balanced and sort of let us sort of mold it into its own bar program that it is now. But we had no idea what we were doing, and had no idea what we were getting into. It's a really different culture of customers and patrons and guests as well, because it's one thing to do that fresh everything bagel with a big beautiful smear of cream cheese and a triple shot of espresso at 1 p.m., and it's another thing to, we kind of moved into the dark side of hospitality, a whole different set of things that come with it, which is, a lot on people's behavior and how you set a vibe and how you set boundaries for the way they behave in your place. And it was a whole new world for us.
Yeah, well, I mean, just the fact that you guys started with the cocktail menu, I would think that that would sort of start to kind of dictate a bit how the crowd, would
Yeah.
respond, in there. So how was that changeover going from kind of being a divey place to being a place with some craft cocktails? I mean, it's still a community hub.
I think we had a little bit of pushback. I remember in 2013, people thinking that we were the most expensive place in town because our Moscow mules were $8, I think. And, looked at as expensive bar.
Mhm.
And we had a Tables and Ale was across the street from us, which was a brilliantly divey smoky bar, and they actually closed a couple of years ago. But
Mhm.
I were looking across the street at the fights that were going on as we were sort of getting open and restoring the space and cleaning it up and pulling out the grid ceiling and that stuff in the building. And we were kind of watching with our eyebrows raised from across the street, wondering if that's what we were in for. But I do think at that point, I mean, fresh flowers and, fresh fruit and price point is a way to dictate who comes into your place.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
it's interesting to us because we've gone through such a housing shift as one of the hottest rental markets in the country in the last 3 years. And we keep winning
Crazy.
in Fayetteville, Arkansas, that we are now the dive bar on the street again. And everywhere that is within a half a block of us is charging considerably more for our cocktails. And so
Wow.
I think about Maxine a lot because I had thought about her a lot during the pandemic as well. But we've gone through some pretty historic and fast changes in our area in the last 10 years, and I wonder how she did that for 50 years. It feels like a couple of lifetimes that we've been doing this since the pandemic in our industry. So it's
Yeah, because she opened up, it was at 1950 when she opened up.
yeah,
And I mean, just thinking how society changed so much during that time, and being at Fayetteville probably saw a lot of societal changes, rumbling through there, especially for the university next door.
totally. She also, I mean, there are pictures. There are so many different phases. There's a great video from the mid 70s where the booths in the bar were all this sort of great, like dusty teal color. Um, and then, you can see it shift to red and you can see different little details. She had some really cool Schlitz lamp shades, that had
Nice.
her pictures on them that glowed at a certain point over the bar. And yeah, I mean, staying relevant in your community is one of the ways that you stick around for a long time in our industry, both, from a food or drink perspective. I mean, in hospitality, that's how we stay here is we learn how to shift and we learn how to flex and we learn how to evolve with what's happening around us, or we don't and we go away a lot of times.
Well, you guys, from what I saw, you have jumped into this cocktail menu where you guys are working with your team to come up with unique craft cocktails specific to the bar, but you're also working with the community for like crowdfunding and stuff. Do I have that right? You're working with like getting fundraising for university students or something. I feel like I read some sort of community outreach thing that Maxine's took part in.
Is something that we put into place a couple years ago.
Mhm.
One of the regulars at our bar and who has been drinking at Maxine since Maxine was alive is a professor at the university, and we started a legacy scholarship fund
Mm.
as Studies department at the university that is in Maxine Miller's name. And so we do have a couple of fundraisers for her on her birthday, which is on Cinco de Mayo, and then her anniversary of the bar, which is the day after St. Patrick's Day. And we do a fundraiser for that fund. And so we that is one of the nonprofits that or nonprofit causes that we support through the bar. That's one of the things that we donate to and raise funds for. We also support Fayetteville Independent Restaurant Alliance, which is a group of us that came together during the pandemic that helped with rent or a
Oh,
broken medical emergencies for people in hospitality. And so we grant money, and the four of us on the board and our community raised money for that organization as well. And we also support our Northwest Arkansas equality group that hosts Pride for us every year. And we've got lots of things that we support actually through the bar, but those are our three big ones that we really spend a lot of time collaborating with.
that's incredible. I mean, it's so important, especially, as you said, how, when communities are changing and people are starting to fear that it's changing maybe too much, or that they're losing the identity of that town or that neighborhood. I think it's really important to just stay looped in. We own a bar. I with a group of women, we own a bar in a little Tokyo district of downtown LA, and we're not Japanese. And so us moving into this neighborhood, we, made efforts to be accepted and to work with our community for that same reason. We didn't want to be seen as interlopers. We want to be part of our community, even though we don't quite match the stereotypical demographic, that has been there for so long. I think it's so important. So that's amazing
Yeah.
that you do that.
It's good for business and for us to, I mean, that's another way that we can dictate. I mean, for us to be considered an industry place because we help, in emergency situations, or for us to be part of the LGBTQ community,
Mhm.
as we support an organization that supports them in many ways. I mean, it is good for business, but I think also for me, because we are selling booze and it has this dark side of addiction and
Yeah.
style that can come with it, I think that it's also good for our souls and for our karma.
Yeah, for sure. Well, tell me about, you mentioned like when you guys started your phase as a caretaker to Maxine's, that you did a throwback menu to kind of get people adjusted to classic cocktails, I think, in this setting.
I think part of it was a throwback to that era, but part of it was also because we were new, and that was like a really good basic 101 start for us,
Mhm.
to be able to um, start off with a solid old fashioned and a Manhattan, and those things just weren't being served in our market at that point in time, which is a little bit later than the rest of the country, I realize. But I think it also gave us a basic training on how to do those properly, and
Mhm.
how to move on. And eventually, I mean, there are only so many classics you can do. And at one point,
Yeah.
we had a menu, a year and a half later, that I think was 50 drinks deep in all the different categories of the spirits that were all classics. And some of them probably shouldn't be and are not what we drink anymore. But at a certain point in time, we felt we had a solid and consistent team. I mean, one of our bartenders that is with us now, JD, has been with us since 2013, and seen all of the phases that we've been through. And Jorge's been with us for almost 8 years.
Wow.
Um, so, we kind of did that with our original team together. And so we helped the bar evolve, and the menu that we served evolved with us and in our community. And so we try and stay up on trends, and now you can hit a craft cocktail bar with a rock pretty much in any direction around us in the middle of the entertainment district, or a
Mhm.
tiki night, or a brand night, or whatever it is. But that stuff was not happening here until 4 or 5 years ago. So,
That's amazing. Well, you mentioned too a jukebox or a couple of jukeboxes. Were there multiple jukeboxes at Maxine's at one point?
well, not at the same time, but
Okay.
yeah.
I was like, well, how does that work?
And I like to, when you have a place that, especially that's been there that long, but if you have any place that is successful or become sort of this community cornerstone of a place where people gather, then one of the my favorite things about it, and also the hardest things about it, is the people that are patrons there take ownership in that place, and I love that. But it also leaves us open to a lot of criticism or how we should have done things. And we have a lot of people that come in and say, I was here when, or you should have been here when. And
Mm.
most of them are gracious and kind, and some of them say Maxine was married to at one point the city attorney in Fayetteville, and it was famously known as an underage bar. And she had, I mean, there are people that come in and say, I have not been here since I was 17, or that I haven't been in this bar since I was 16. That was a very long time ago, but her husband would get the heads up from the ABC that they were coming up from Little Rock, and she would push them all out the back door before anybody was able to ever ticket her. And so I think, man, I'm sorry, I lost track. I
We're
switched.
jukebox. We're getting over to jukeboxes. The kids in the jukebox.
So when people take ownership of these places, and when they come in and they say, I was here for this jukebox, she also had a couple of different, they're sort of bowling machines with the pins that lift, and you kind of scoot the thing on the, long alley. And everybody that has been in Maxine's calls it the ding machine, because it had a ding ding when you made a strike. And it sounds completely obnoxious to me. I can't imagine working with that thing going all the time. It's like being in a Dave and Buster's or something, with the overstimulation. But my favorite thing to say to them is, which ding ding machine was it, or which jukebox was it? Because she was there for so long that she would just move out a broken machine and repair it over time and get a new one, and it would have a whole new lineup of records. And so
Mm.
everybody has a favorite jukebox depending on what era they were in the bar, which
So
is
how
pretty.
do it is cool. That's fun. I mean, it's such a demarcation of time, you know. How do you guys handle the music in there now? Is it still jukebox? I'd be scared to be at the mercy of a
And
jukebox
it's
personally.
not a jukebox anymore. We have never wanted to do that.
Yeah.
We have a few guidelines for what the bartenders can play on their shifts, but they are allowed to make their own playlists or play their own radio stations. And we have a couple of big no-nos, but for the most part, it's pretty open. And it's a tricky thing to read a room. And I am realizing, the younger the people are that we hire, and the younger that people are that come onto our team, how tricky it can be to teach them how to read a crowd and understand what people want to hear and how to set a vibe for a diverse group of people. I mean, our happy hours are, it can be a lot of women and men in their 60s. It can be our friends from City Hall that are leaving the offices. And it can also be a gaggle of sorority girls that, to go off to do some kind of a parent night event. And it can be really diverse. And so it's tricky. I always go to soul and funk. Jorge tends to go to Latin music. We try and stay away from anything too moody.
Mm.
Indie can get pretty moody pretty quick, but I mean, there's definitely types of music that make people want to drink and make them want to hang out and have a party, and that is mostly our job.
Well, this rooster crows at the break of dawn. He's mourning for you all the day long. Well, come on, back with me. It's cold and dark in this house you see. Well, come on back to me. Let's grow old as a family.
You were saying that you and Ben are big music nerds, and you just mentioned, I think, already being at a music festival and coming from Denver. I love Denver, by the way, Mercury Lounge. Been over there. So what is your world of music? When did you start becoming a total nerd?
My mother is still a touring musician. She's a finger picking guitar player. She lives in
Cool.
and she plays the blues. And one of the few white ladies that is still, picking at Winfest and competing and doing all that stuff. My parents also were part of sort of a cooperative music venue Well, I don't know what we really call it. It was called the Denver Folklore Center in the 70s and 80s in downtown Denver, and Harry Tuft owned it. But there was a large community of musicians that came out of that space. And we always, I mean, I grew up with an extra bedroom in our house that was always there to house bands. There were a lot of late night practices, and it was sort of a Ooh, Denver Folklore Center had a music venue. It also had luthier rooms and classrooms and a bead counter and a record counter. And it
Nice.
kind of served as this hub in downtown for a lot of Boulder and Denver folks that were in the Americana and folk scene in the 70s and 80s. And Denver's still a great stopover between Kansas City and the West Coast. I mean, it's still one of the few.
It's such a great music town. It really is. A good friend of mine was the music editor for the Denver Post for a long, long time.
What a
And yeah, so I got to go out. They started the UMS Fest when that started. I used to go out for those festivals out there. Just great music town. So with all of that around you, you didn't pick up an instrument yourself?
I did. It was sort of assumed that my brother still plays. He plays a happy hour at Laurel Thirst in Portland every Tuesday since he was in college, which I think is going on 25 years now. He plays the stand-up bass in a bluegrass band called Jackstraw. But yeah, we both played instruments. I did musical theater. I did flute for a while. We both started classical piano very young. My parents are big music people, and I'm the only one that really did never gave a go at it professionally. But I can justify that in the amount of music that we've hosted and the musicians that we've supported. And live music is not as much fun without an audience, and I am right there in the front row, so they need me too.
Oh, it's true. I can't play music, but at the same time, I think, and you probably have experienced this too, your creativity has just come out in other ways. Because obviously you've been involved in hospitality. I mean, you've been baking, you're part of putting on music festivals, or at least street fair, block fair kind of stuff. So it's still there.
Totally. And we have hosted quite a few we've pulled back a little bit on the live music since COVID. We Our licensing got more expensive.
Mhm.
Our sound guys got more expensive. I mean, the value of what that all looks like for everybody in the music industry changed in 2020 and 2021. It is a terrible room for live music. It's sort of a long shotgun bar with a big, the space in the back. The bar runs 70 feet long for almost the entire length of the building, and then there's sort of a square area space in the back
Mhm.
where we can put a band. But I mean, you really can't see anything, once more than halfway through the bar. And we never charged a ticket for live music, and we always sort of just built in the cost of a band and running sound into what we thought that we could do in our full sales for the night, so that it was at least neutral income instead of losing. But we haven't really we have had some great shows there. We've always participated in Fayetteville Roots Festival and done a late night stage that was non-ticketed for them. I love how many people we have hosted at Maxine's. I mean, Nick Shoulders is out on the road and playing a lot of big shows now, and he's a Fayetteville guy, and he was our Tuesday night house band in the dump truck 10 years ago. And Willie Carlisle's out playing and hitting the road. And, he started playing in our Sunday night service shows when he was sort of in a bow tie and an accordion and kind of finding his voice. And I love being able to go back to all the people that are still playing music and are really getting solid. I mean, that's a feather in our cap of
I
being
was
able
going to say, look at you doing a little A&R there.
well, just being able to, yeah, let them evolve and give them a space. I mean, that's one of the things that's hardest to watch when we look at these cities and neighborhoods that are having, housing crises, and the rent is increasing, is that it doesn't leave a lot of room for the dollar bar and the DIY places where you get beer cans thrown at you and cigarette ashtrays flung on stage, and there's blood and screaming and drama, and you're 21 and it's a hot mess, and bands have to do that part of learning to perform too. And
Mhm.
so I don't know where those places are going to be,
Well,
you
you
know
also, then when the rents get that high, where do the artists live? You
well,
know?
that's a big one too. And I,
Mhm.
I mean, it's the same for hospitality people in our
Mhm.
area. I mean,
Yeah.
used to be able to walk home at 3:30 in the morning a couple blocks away in downtown, and now they're it's a
It's
different
a half
equation.
hour drive home.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's been happening all over the country. I mean, I mentioned to you before we started recording that I used to live in the Bay Area for a long time. And when I lived there in the 90s, I had a boyfriend that joked, this is such a great place to live when you're broke. Because it was at the time. There were plenty of
Right.
options for, kids who are putting themselves through school or just wanted to be there to be an artist, to go find a place to eat or to get together with friends or to rent, it was an option. And now for years I've been like, where do the baristas live? You know, they
Even
can't
the
afford.
is pretty expensive
Mhm.
these days. I mean, even the Tenderloin district is
Oh
too
God.
expensive for them to live in.
I know the Tenderloin. I mean, the Tenderloin is still one of the scariest places that I've ever been to, and it's more expensive than
If
how,
you need $1,800 studio apartment in a very terrifying place, the
uh-huh.
Tenderloin got it
Isn't
covered
that
for.
isn't that crazy? Yeah, it's so wild. So on your end, then I love that the Fayetteville music scene is not one that comes to mind for me, right away, being a snooty California kid. I'm not snooty. It's just learning. I'm always learning. So what is that scene like? It sounds like you've been a part of it since you've been there.
Um, Georgia's music venue, Georgia's Majestic, has, oh, I can't remember. I think they're in their 90th year. They're really close. They're getting up there with the 100, and they're right on Dixon Street, right off campus. And I think it's a 900 person room, and they have a front stage area.
Huge. That's massive.
I mean, we see, my husband and I originally met in Eureka Springs, which is about an hour from here, and it's kind of a tourist mountain town that has a historic auditorium where I mean, in my 20s, I got to see Ray Charles and Bill
Mm.
Cosby before we knew he was a rapist,
Uh,
and Luther Allison, and a lot of great people coming through and seeing that venue. And, at the same time, there was sort of this hippie Fayetteville college scene that was going on. And Steve Kimmock had a lot of shows at George's and still comes back once a year. The band is kind of from down in this area. And
yeah.
so that sort of style. Most of my elders, I would call them, from Eureka Springs, on Helm stories about the house that they
Mm.
lived in and how Levon stayed there. And I don't know. I mean, it's also been through a lot of changes, but I mean, Georgia's still hosts. We see Andy Frasco once a year. Just saw California Honey Drops, who I love. Shovels and Rope is coming through next week, and we have great access to music. I mean, we're 2 hours from Tulsa, we're 3 hours from Kansas City, we're 3 hours from Little Rock, and 4 hours from Memphis. I mean,
Wow.
we can drive to New Orleans in 8 hours. We do as often as we can because what phenomenal music scene they have, and
Mm.
food and architecture and just culture.
Everything. Yeah.
What a magic, beautiful, unique place that is. But we're on a great routing path for markets that are bigger, that are right around us, and people in Fayetteville are big live music supporters.
That's awesome. That's so great. I
Great.
mean, I love that culture seems to be really embraced, in this town, and that you guys have had a hand in kind of, showing people, hey, here's what's going on these days, while keeping that tradition alive too of Maxine's. I love on the website that you guys have the recording of Maxine's last call.
We do. She also, we have that plugged into her old payphone in the back of the bar. You can pick up the payphone and hear her on a soundbite. It has to be a pretty mellow night to be able to hear what's going on in the, but
That's
it is.
awesome. So do you
And
guys imitate that when it's time to close up shop?
we did for a little while when we very first, when we were there 12 years ago. But I can tell you that it just doesn't hit the same when Maxine's not delivering it. And telling people to get the hell out has a different voice when it's you at the tired end of the night. But I mean, she was in there every night, and she was incredibly shrewd. She was a real penny pincher. The drains underneath her beer taps, that would typically go into some kind of a drain line, which they don't. But they were, the holes in the drains and then underneath the taps were filled with super glue when we moved in there. And at the end of the night, she would have the bartender in front of her lay out a bar towel in that drain trough and squeeze it into a pint glass, and she would charge them retail for what they wasted and a spillover of a beer. She was hard. Sure, there are lots of stories about what weapons she kept behind the bar. I only found a baseball bat when we were in there, but I mean, she was a single woman.
Yeah. I
In an era where she actually wasn't allowed to have her own checking account, and so I'm sure that she took great measure to hire people around her that she felt safe in.
Mhm.
I think she also, I got, I think she also adapted to be able to make them behave. I mean, she was a force, and I never met her, but I know enough people that met her and knew her that, I mean, most of them were terrified to talk to her at the bar when they came in.
I mean, I know that in the country, women couldn't even be bartenders until what, maybe like the 70s or something in most states.
Oh, I don't know.
I'm not sure what it was for your state, but my understanding was that for a lot of states, the only way a woman could be a bartender was if it was owned by the family. Uh,
Oh,
I don't know what it is for your state, but that was pretty common in a lot of places. And
proper.
I
How
love
important
that.
for a lady to be behind the bar.
Right? But I love how she went around it and just borrowed the money and was just like, I'll pay you back, from her family. So it was a family bar and she had every right to work there if there were those kinds of rules in place at that time. It's just
Yeah.
amazing, amazing human. I'm so grateful that I stumbled across you guys and learned about her and you caretaking this space and keeping that legacy alive and adding to it, very
It,
well. Adding to it.
it's an honor. I mean, just the fact that after we've now created two places that we have chosen the right people to sort of pass that torch on to, and knowing that they are still community cornerstone places. And, I mean, one of them has been there. Little Bread will be 17 in that location this year.
Congrats.
So just the fact that this business has been around as long as it has been and comes with all the stories and all the memories that it does, but on top of that, that it was owned by a woman who was married twice and, neither of her husbands ever had a hand in the business and it was all hers, is really, I mean, that it's an honor to make sure that she's remembered. I mean, that's what the Legacy Fund is about. Archive at the university for a lot of the stuff that was in the bar so that the family doesn't have to physically hold on to everything. But I mean, those are places that should be celebrated and remembered.
For sure. So, my last question for you is when you are having a moment to yourself, slowing things down, maybe you're just sitting at the bar, chilling out for a minute, what would you prefer to listen to and sip on when you're having that time?
I tend to lean into Otis Redding and Nina Simone, especially much to the chagrin of my bartenders. At closing time, I tend to like to have something that I can really do. And I don't know. I mean, I am usually a vodka soda kind of girl at this point. I've gone through lots of different phases, but it's consistently been, less of the sugars, less of the everything.
Yep.
Um, if I was picking a favorite drink that was sort of a special occasion, I would have a good old fashioned and probably with Basil Hayden.
I'd take that. I would
That would
not turn it away.
be my nightcap, probably with a good Otis Redding song. Those pair
Nice.
together.
That is nice. I do like that combo a lot. It feels very soothing to me, actually.
Moody right before bed.
Yeah.
And
Well, let me know if people want to track you down, where the best place is, the bar, if it's Instagram, whatever social media you guys have.
sure, Maxine's Tap Room, and we're on Block Avenue, and we are Maxine's Tap Room on Instagram, maxinestaproom.com for a website. We have not branched into the TikToks world because
Yeah.
I feel like Maxine, she's 75 at this point. I don't know, she might be too old for the TikTok. But we are definitely on Facebook. We are, and definitely in Fayetteville. If you ever find yourself coming through our neighborhood, it's very rare that we travel to the West Coast or to New Orleans or to Denver where people say, "Oh yeah, I went right through Arkansas." Most people ask us where Arkansas is and what's in it, and so I don't know, but in person is a great place to visit. It's a
Yeah.
beautiful It's a beautiful brick building and it's very unassuming, and it's just one of those great bars that has no windows, that when you walk in the door, the whole world goes away, which I think a lot of us could use more often than not.
Yeah, no, I mean that's kind of the whole point, right? Is giving that space to kind of let your mind depart from all the other things that are outside that door.
Yep.
Well, thank you so much for talking with me today. I really appreciate getting to learn more about Maxine's and Maxine and just that whole little scene down there in Fayetteville, because I want other people to know about it who might get to travel more than I do to that part of the world.
Well, I'm happy that you discovered us. I don't know.
Well, my eyes adjust, my joints are rusty, sheets are awful cold and dusty. Roll over, folks, it must have been another night of bend. Kick rocks, slapping tongues, fool on levee, walks, couches, but kingdom in nice where there's bugs in my head.
So if anyone wants to just fund my road trip around the United States for like a year or something, I would be so happy to go and visit some of these great spots that I've been able to chat with, like Maxine's Tap Room, and visit with Hannah and meet Ben. Go to the Maxine's Tap Room website. You can find information about their legacy funds and what it contributes to there, as well as the history of the bar. I just went and I didn't find Maxine's soundbite, but maybe it'll be back. And also go to Instagram, Maxine's Tap Room, to find out what's going on in case you happen to be in the neighborhood. I hope somebody is. Get back to me and tell me all about it if you're out there listening and you have been. You want to tell me how cool it is, because I'm really jealous about this one. Also, Hannah did give me a little playlist. It is on the Music and Booze with Mo Spotify profile. It's a Hannah Festo for sure, so go check that out. And thank you so much, Hannah and Ben, for giving me your time and talking to me about this wonderful space that you are lucky enough to be caretaking these days. Thank you for tuning in to our barroom chats on Music and Booze with Mo. For more info about today's guest, or if you want to connect with me, check out my Facebook page, Mo Herms. Please subscribe to the podcast and feel free to tell all your friends about it. While you're there, give the show a rating and a review. It really helps to get the word out. If you want to hear the playlists our guests have curated, search She Be Mo on Spotify, SHEBMO. Find pictures of the interviewees and the cool stuff they create on the Music and Booze with Mo Instagram account. Lower your expectations and join us at the bar. Till next time, cheers.